Let us begin the proceedings with an invocation. May we live our lives with a good heart and a good mind, and serve each other as pilgrims on planet Earth. And may the good Lord be gracious upon each one of us in our spiritual endeavor of life. We'll continue from where we left. The Christian Church has laid great emphasis on the concept of sin. So let us try to understand a little more about what this word sin means. At the very outset itself, I must let you know that we can look upon it, the concept of sin, from two different perspectives. One is from a worldly point of view, the other is from a spiritual perspective, a spiritual point of view. We should not let the two aspects get confused with each other. For the word sin has got a very intriguing sense in its explanation. Of course, in a worldly sense, it is very clear to everyone that when one does something very wrong, commits an injustice towards another, and violates the basic moral codes of conduct as generally understood by human society in all parts of the world, then it is said to be a sin or a sinful act. It is a sin to be unjust, to deprive one of another's property and wealth, to take advantage of another's innocence, and to give false witness when the situation arises. All this is considered to be part of sin from a worldly point of view, worldly perspective. And this is very clear, and it's clearly understood by the entire human race. When one does something wrong to another, that is wrong and that is sinful. That's a wrong act. Then, there is another perspective with which sin is also to be understood, and that is from a spiritual perspective. So from a spiritual point of view, the word sin means to deviate from your God center. when you are off-centered from God, then you are said to be living in sin. So, the opposite of it is when you are centered in God and living in God from a spiritual perspective, that is said to be a life of virtue and goodness. Its opposite, wherein you have strayed away from your God center and are functioning from your human center, that means you have got off-centered, you have got deviated from your true godly center. That is said to be, that it is said that you are now living in sin. So this is from a spiritual or metaphysical point of view. So therefore, this is what is popularly expressed. When people say you're living in sin means, this is exactly what it means from a spiritual point of view. So, when a person has got a vision of the world, a vision of the multiplicity of names and forms around him, then he is said to be living in sin. That's the real meaning of the word sin. And when he has got centered, and when he is living with God awareness, he has corrected himself from the spiritual error, so he has deviated from where he got deviated, and he has reverted back to his true center, which is his God center. So this is the spiritual meaning of the word sin. Jesus too mentions this when he was discussing and arguing with the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the priest. They asked him back, does it mean that we are also living in sin? That's what the Pharisees and Sadducee priest asked. And Jesus replied, since you are seeing, you are in sin. Since you are seeing the universe, you are seeing the multiplicity of names and forms in which you are involved. For Jesus says, I have come to give sight to the blind, to those who are spiritually blind. Who are those who are spiritually blind? They are those whose focus of attention is on the multiplicity of things, which is the names and forms of the objects and things of the world. So this is the world vision. So to correct this, Jesus was saying, I have come to give sight to the blind. So now you are blind. You are blindly living. And this state of affairs has also been said as, in the Hindu tradition, as Maya. Maya means that which is the power of delusion and illusion. You have got deluded into the multiplicity of things and are living in an illusory world. Therefore it is Maya. And that state of affairs wherein a person is so living in Maya is said to be sin. But on the other hand, when you acquire the God vision, then you have corrected yourself and got back to your God status, godly status. God center rather, and you are so functioning. So that is why Buddha also very nicely said, the way to nirvana is the middle path. The middle path. So the middle path means when you are centered, when you are not off balanced, then that is said to be the middle path or the psychological middle path. And it is when you are so centered in this way, you are now living in God, and you got corrected, and this is with the God vision, God awareness. So this is the spiritual or metaphysical concept of the word sin and its correction. And its correction. Now, having said this much about it, then Jesus goes on to say that I have come to do the will of my Father, by which he implies that you too also should live your life by the will of your Father, of your Heavenly Father. So, his life was an education, the way he lived, so that you could also emulate him. His life was a teaching, the way he lived. I came to do the will of my Father, which he knows. Being a Messiah, he knows the will of his Father spontaneously, even before it has transpired, while you do not know. Nevertheless, as per the way the will of God operates in your life, you lovingly take it and discharge it. So, this is the way a man should live, with the will of God, being God-centered. Being God-centered means to be centered. To be centered is to be God-centered, or Atman-centered, and then operate in the world. Then, Jesus also says something very interesting and intriguing. He says the Son of Man has no place of his own. He is referring to himself as the Son of Man. At certain times he refers to himself as the one who came from his Father. At other times he refers to himself as the Son of Man. Now in this instance he is identifying himself with all those spiritual seekers of the world, those people who have been so graced by God to live a spiritual life, especially so the hermits of the world. They are truly said to be the sons of God, so he refers to them as the Son of Man, has no place of his own. He is a wanderer. He has no premises of his own. He goes everywhere. The entire planet Earth is his field of operations. And he cannot call any particular place as his own. So, that's what he means when he says the Son of Man has no place of his own, referring to his own life. So during the days of ministry, and perhaps even before that too, he had no place of his own, and he was going about, and he was going about from village to village, town to town, being received by people, staying in their homes, and giving the teachings. Now the wonderful thing is, to whichever village he went to, or whichever little town he visited, he stayed there for some time, he tarried there for some time, and his ministry was over 3 years. And it was a circuit that he took a 3-year ministerial circuit. So during that time, wherever he stayed, he gave a teaching or a sermon. So therefore it is said that at every place that he stayed and gave a teaching is said to be a sermon, and thus it is said that there were over 100 sermons, 100 gospels. But what is available to us officially is only four official and a few others. The rest of the gospels, gospel teachings, which were given at various other places, were all relegated into the background by the interest, by those who had vested interest in the matter. So therefore, but nevertheless, the 4 gospels which are available to us today have got adequate information and adequate guidance for man's salvation, for his guidance and for his teachings, for his living. There is sufficient guidance available even in those 4 gospels which are currently available. So thus, this is another spiritual law wherein he states, the Son of Man has no place of his own. And this is true of all people who become hermits in the world. A hermit, a true hermit, is one who has no fixed abode or no place of his own. He has no private ashram of his own. He is a houseless guy, a man without a permanent address. What address can he give? He has only one address. Care of God, that's all. Now you can imagine what address that is the only address that he has. So therefore, now the Son of Man has no place of his own. All the others, they have a place of their own. They have their own setups. So then he says, freely give. Freely give. Why? Because you have freely received. As you have freely received, what have you received freely? Of course, you know very well that in life every one of you receives many things freely. From so many people, from so many places you receive many things freely. And even from God too also, you freely receive His grace. Even when you deserve it, the day's grace comes to you. And when you don't deserve it also, the grace of God comes to you. So you have freely received it. Therefore, freely give too. Freely give. Just give. If you have something, just learn to give. Just give. Don't hold on to anything. Freely give. With all your heart. Lovingly give. And the beauty about freely giving is, the more you give freely, the more you become richer. The more you become richer in heart, your heart expands and grows, and you become a very rich man, very rich person. The richness is there within you. Even when you have nothing, you are very rich indeed. You are very rich. On the other hand, even if you have everything, and if you are a miser, you are always a miser, poor indeed. A poor miser. However rich he may be monetarily, but he is very much a miser, a miserable guy. So therefore, freely give as you have freely received. Then, freely teach too. Freely teach, because that is the wealth which has to be shared unto humanity. So therefore, freely teach and freely preach, and at the same time affirm the truth. Never deviate from the truth. Affirm what the truth is. When you freely preach and teach, affirm the truth the truth statements all the time, the truth of what you are teaching. Affirm that all the time. Then Jesus himself has time and again declared his mission. Declared his mission. For it was said by the church that Jesus came to die for your sins. That's the part of the church doctrine. We are not talking of that he came here to die for your sins, for the remission of your sins. No. But he had a different mission. And that mission he has enumerated time and again. In the Gospel of Luke, he specifically lets you know what his mission is to give. His mission is to give sight to the blind. To those who are spiritually blind, he wants to give them the spiritual insight, the spiritual vision of God. And those who are deaf, he wants them to hear, to give hearing to the deaf, because people have been deaf to the good news. And what is the good news? The good teaching. So he wants to open it out so that you can hear the good teachings. Even as a person who is standing by. You may be standing nearby. You know, when you go to these preaching, wherever these preachings take place, sometimes there is a gathering there and you also just walk in to hear what is being said. What is being said. So you hear. You hear. So when you hear, then things open out in you to give. So he wants you to hear what the good teachings are. That's part of the mission. So that is why he went about all over. You think he had nothing better to do than that? To go about all over preaching and teaching? There was a purpose for it. To give you the good news, the good information, the good. So then, he also says that I have come to release the captives. You have been made captives by your very passions itself. You are held in captive by your desires. They have captured you. So you have become a captive to your own impulses. And therefore he has come to release you from your worldly passions and to heal the broken-hearted. Of course, you're the broken-hearted, to give you to heal you. You've got your heart and your mind, you're in so much of discord. You're at discord with yourself. Not with either others, but with yourself. You're at personal discord with yourself. And to heal you and to make you one and whole, and the way to do so, he has come to give you this. And also to tell you the day of salvation. The day of salvation. And what is the day of salvation? Today is the day of salvation, not tomorrow. Today. Now is the time of salvation. Now is the time of salvation. And here is the place of salvation, here. So be in the now. When you are here, be in the now. And here and now is the time, is the place and the time of salvation. So wherever you are, that is your here. And wherever you are, in whichever part of the world, that is your here. And in that place, be in the now. So be in the now. Live in the now, be in the present. Live in the present. So when you are living in the present, you have forgotten your past. Don't worry about your future. Your future has been taken care of. Your past is a bygone past, a dead past. You can learn lessons from your past, that's a different issue. But don't dwell in the past. Neither dwell in the imaginings of the future, but live in the present, in the now. Just be in the now and keep on functioning. And that will lead you to salvation. Be in the here and in the now. It's so simple as that. So when you are here and in the now, you are centered and live your life peacefully and calmly. So your life is a spiritual journey, just like a pilgrim. A pilgrim is in no hurry. In the olden days, people went on pilgrimage. They were not in a hurry. Today the modern world or the modern society is in a hurry. Everyone is running. But in the olden days, people peacefully walked from place to place as a pilgrim on pilgrimage. No hurry, peacefully living, peacefully walking, peacefully living. And when you can live your life peacefully, just peacefully live your life, then your life, wherever you are, whether you are living at home or in a countryside or in a city, it doesn't matter, but learn to live peacefully, patiently and quietly. Then you are living in the now and you are living in God. And thus, by and by, this is the pilgrimage that you are going through. In your very house itself, you become the pilgrim of your soul. Pilgrim of your soul, that is your pilgrimage. And in the countryside too, so be it. So therefore, he said that is the mission that he has come, to give you the good teachings. Give you the good teachings. Then he says, you are your own guru. Physician, heal thyself. You are the physician. You have to heal yourself from your own discords. So whatever problems and discords that you have, quietly sit down, objectively analyze your problems and your situations and resolve them. Then you become your own physician and you can heal yourself in this manner. And when you do so, you become your own guru. You become your own guru. So then Jesus says, who is a disciple? Who is a disciple? The disciple is one who understands his teachings and lives by them. And lives by them. Such a person is a disciple. Is a disciple of Jesus, is a disciple of Krishna. When you understand the Bhagavad Gita totally and live by its teachings, then you become automatically a disciple of God. A disciple of God. So, then he says, it was asked of him, it was asked of Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus replied, this was asked by the Pharisees, the priest. They wanted to pin him down with some questions. So one of the questions they asked was, what is the greatest commandment? So he replied, to love thy Lord with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your life, and with all your soul, to love thy Lord. That is the first and the foremost commandment. So to love God with all your heart, with all your heart. That's clear. If you want to love somebody, love God. Then with all your mind too. With all your mind is on God all the time. And then with all your soul, with all your being, love God. And with all your life, love God. So this is the greatest commandment. And then they asked him, what is the next? And he replied, the next commandment is, love thy neighbor as thyself. Love thy neighbor. And then he said, on these two commandments hinge all the rest of commandments in the world indeed. Everything, all other commandments hinge on this. So one was a commandment with respect to God, the other was a commandment with respect to the human race and with all beings around you. And these, if you can observe these two commandments, then you will be observing all the commandments in life. Love thy neighbor as thyself. So everyone is a neighbor. Generally, people, of course, the first thing that you love is you love yourself. That's the first step. Then the second step is you love your immediate family. That is also very clear. Of course, you may have some discords here and there at times, but you love them. In spite of everything, you love them because they happen to be part of your immediate family. Then you begin to love your relatives too. And along with that, now go one step further. Love your neighbor as thyself. Love your neighbor. Be neighborly. Be friendly. Be neighborly and friendly with your neighbors. That is your extended family. So the neighbors also, so all the neighbors around you. Be a friendly person. I remember once when I was in the mountains, there was a Swami, an elderly Swami. He belonged to a different sect. You may call it a very obnoxious sect, who had great pride and vanity about themselves, and who wouldn't happily and freely interact with others. But this particular Swami, he would lovingly, as an old man, lovingly interact and greet everyone who passed his way with a smile and with a greeting. And then, being an old man, he soon passed away. Now when a Swami passes away, on the 16th day, there is a Shodashi, as it is said, a feast with certain rituals are done. A feast along with some ritualistic ceremonies. So on that day there was generally a good feast. And invariably all Swamis take part in that feast, or nearby Swamis. Now the wonderful thing about this particular feast was, everyone who partook of that feast felt a great deal of goodness in having participated in that meal. A loving goodness. The reason being, that particular Swami was an exception, and he was living with love with everyone. Therefore, that particular last meal which was offered in his name on the 16th day after his physical departure was such a beautiful meal indeed. And this was well expressed by all the other Swamis who partook of that. So therefore, we should all learn to live our life with love in our hearts. With love. No matter who they are, with all around you. And the beauty and the good thing about this is, about being neighborly, is that You can only be a good loving neighbor and a good loving individual, full of love towards everybody, provided you neither feel yourself superior to anybody or inferior to anybody. You consider everybody as an equal, There is nobody superior, higher than you, nobody is inferior to you, because we are all brothers living in this universe, the children of God. So what is there to feel superior, to have superiority and inferiority? So no one is inferior to anybody and no one is superior to anybody. And when you can have this feeling of equalness with everyone, you will have a very natural interaction with everyone around you. With everyone around you, your interaction would be very natural indeed. Very, very natural. So therefore, Jesus said, these are the two great commandments which have to be observed by everyone. One is on to love God with all your heart, mind and soul and spirit and strength. And then at the same time, love all beings around you. Love all beings. So when you love all beings around you, then what happens? You can cause no harm to anyone because of this love. A mother cannot cause any harm to her children because she has love in her heart towards the children. A natural love. So also you should have this love pouring out from you towards one and all indeed. So thus Jesus was saying this. And then consider God. Consider God as your guru. As your guru. So that is why Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. I am the good shepherd. So the shepherd looks after his flock. And you are his flock. You are his flock. And what does a shepherd do? He lovingly takes care of his flock, of his sheep. Of his sheep he carefully takes care of. And in case one sheep has strayed away, a little sheep has strayed away, then leaving the other 99 sheep which he had of 100, he would go in search of this one sheep which has strayed and got lost and bring it back into the sheepfold, into the pen. And he is so joyous in having recovered one sheep which had got strayed, which had got lost. So God is also equally so, that he is a good shepherd who looks after his sheep. And Jesus himself says that the good shepherd will shepherd his sheep until all sheep become one flock. Until all sheep become one flock with one shepherd. Until all sheep. So that means what? When can you become member of one flock? When? When you don't belong to all these sub-flocks. When you don't belong to that flock and this flock and any religious flock. When you don't belong to us or subscribe to any particular religion. When you only focus your attention on God, you come into the flock which is God's flock. Which is God's flock. Otherwise you become a member of some other flock. And that is where the whole trouble has taken place in the world. So the entire world will have to arrive at this state wherein we become one flock with one shepherd. And that one shepherd is God. God is your shepherd, good shepherd. He is your good shepherd. And therefore, God is your Guru. God is your Guru. I remember up in the Himalayan mountains, in the high mountains, there were shepherds moving about with a flock of sheep. Of course, there are wild animals too. The wild bears and the cheetahs and the panther and tigers are there. He goes along with a dog or two, but if at all a sheep strays, he goes after the sheep. And this man living in the jungles, in the high mountains, he has got a big coat. And I have seen him putting the little sheep onto his coat pocket and lovingly bringing it. If it was a little sheep, he would put it into his pocket, coat pocket, and bring it back into the flock, or carry it along with him wherever he goes. So that is how God does too. So God is your good shepherd who looks after you. So don't ever feel that you are alone, that you are lonely. God is always with you. God is always taking care of you. He is keeping a watchful eye on you. He is your Father. He is your Guru. He is everything to you. Have faith in Him, and accordingly, in the journey of your life, He will protect and take care of you. Not in your way, but in His way. Remember that. You may have your own way. Just like little children saying, this is how I should be looked after by my parents. No, no, no. The parents know better in which way they should look after their little ones. So also God knows in which way He should look after you. So therefore yield yourself into the hands of God. And thus live your life. So people often feel, sometimes people feel whether they should hunt a guru. You know, people go about hunting a guru, like hunting a tiger. People want to hunt a guru. So they go to different parts of the world trying to think that they can hunt a guru. And I read a famous book on this also about 50 years ago, written by an English woman who said, hunting the guru in India, as if you've got to hunt them like tigers. So there is no guru to be hunted like that. It's a good novel to read. An intriguing novel to read. And finally she came to the conclusion that you can't hunt a guru. There is no such guru to be hunted. And so therefore, so God is your guru, and God is your guru. Have faith in God. On whom else will you have faith? Of course, when you are in trouble, you look up to your parents. When you are in the world, you look up to your parents in times of difficulties so that they can help you out in some form or the other. So also, God is always there, looking after you in your anxieties and difficulties and troubles and trials and tribulations of life. So all that you have to do is have faith in God. The trouble is, sometimes God tests your faith. That's where the problem arises. You see, He tests your faith, because whether you have got true faith or a practical, or shall we say, business faith. You know, you've got a business faith. That's not the faith. Whether you have true faith in God, it's unqualified. It's an unqualified faith in God. So thus, all through your life, you are being tested. Then, Jesus has always mentioned this. He admonishes the priest at all times. The priests the world over, they are the same the world over. They have deprived the human race of the way to God. They have concealed it. They have hidden it. They neither want to live it, nor do they want you to live it. They have hidden it, they have covered it. And instead, the priest all over from all religious traditions. They have misled you. So Jesus is openly saying this. You Pharisees and Sadducees and the scribes, you neither want to live it, nor do you permit others to live it. So that is why when he entered the temple, he scattered the money changers in the temple, because the temple at that time in Jerusalem was a huge enterprise, a huge business enterprise. So he scattered them and said, do you want to make the house of my Father, instead of making it a house of prayers, you have made it into a business setup. He accused the priest of that, because they were getting a good dividend out of it, instead of your temple being a house of prayers. So that is why in the olden days, the temples which were there for the pagan gods, sometime during 800 BC, they became synagogues. The temple worship got replaced by synagogue worship. Now what is this synagogue worship? In a synagogue worship, there is only the reading, there is prayers, collective prayers done by everybody, collective prayers done by all together. And then at the same time there is reading of the scriptures, because you have got to be educated, and unless the reading is done, you will not learn from it. So there were two things. One was the reading of the scriptures, the other was collective prayers. Collective prayers, you pray together, not one person mumbling something, but all together. You pray and you also sing collectively hymns in praise of God. So this is the synagogue worship. And in this worship, there was no room or place for rituals. No place for priestly rituals. That was totally discarded. So even today also, that should be the case. That should be the case in all places of worship. There should only be prayers, collective prayers, and the reading of the scriptures. And Jesus says, wherever two or more people gather together and pray, then I am in their midst. I am in their midst. Which means God is in their midst. When number of people sit down and pray together, there is a collective power there. In that collective power, God is in their midst. It's good if the whole family, as the whole family together, can sit down at home and pray together at least once a day. It's very beneficial to the entire family. Very good indeed. And when number of them sit and pray together, then I am in their midst. I am in their midst. I am there. I may also tell you this. That wherever in the world good teachings are given with a good heart, then the angels and the others, other holy beings, sit down unseen by you listening to everything, listening to everything. I remember once while I was delivering some teachings in the United States, the organizer of my talks, she was a little psychic, and after the teachings are over, she asked me, "Who are those people seated around you? Who are they?" She asked me. For she was seeing certain wise people, hearing to the whole sermon. So therefore, whenever you collectively pray together, God is in your midst. Listening to your group prayers, there is strength in group prayers. And Jesus advocates that. Even in meditation too. So meditation is the most powerful form of prayers. Most powerful form of prayers. And in meditation, you are in direct communion with God, each one seated there. And there is a collective power which is brought about in that situation of collective meditation. Collectively, when it is done, there's a collective power which transpires there, which increases the vibration and the tempo of the place. So that is why the best place to go by yourself to sit in meditation is either a temple or a church, because the vibration there has been so permeated by thousands of people sitting down and praying with all their heart, with all their soul, that a particular vibration gets built up by those who come to pray in the temples, in the churches. So that's a good place to sit and meditate on a regular basis, or in a house of prayers. In case you have your own shrine in your own home, that's a good place to sit and meditate and pray. For the good Lord is always there, present, listening to your prayers, listening to your prayers. Have faith in this, have confidence in this. So thus, Jesus was admonishing the priest. And then at the same time, Jesus was saying, keep vigil, keep awake. Keep vigil means keep awake. When do you keep awake? In the night time. When you keep vigil. When you keep vigil, in the night time you keep vigil when everything is silent and everything is quiet all around you. The quiet silence of the night. You keep vigil. For what? For the arrival of the good Lord. Keep vigil, because when you keep vigil, you either keep vigil for two people in the night time, either for the thieves or for God. and both come to you stealthily. Got to. So you've got to be fully aware, fully alert, not sleepy or drowsy in the night time. In the night time. So that is why the parable of the 10 virgins, as is mentioned by Jesus, wherein 5 virgins trimmed their wick and their oil lamps, and in the night time they kept vigil. For whom? For Jesus was said to be the bridegroom. Jesus was said to be the bridegroom. Well, it is figuratively said, not that he is the bridegroom, but it is mentioned in a allegorical or figuratively mentioned that when you so maintain vigil for God, and that is said to be the second coming of Christ. The second coming of Christ consciousness within you. When they use the word the second coming of Christ, what it really means is the coming of the Christ consciousness into you. Christ consciousness into you. So in order to facilitate this process, you have got to maintain vigil. I remember in some of the convents and monasteries that I had visited in Europe, in Switzerland, I noticed there was one huge convent for convent nuns. Convents are basically meant for nuns in the olden days. And the courtyard was there, all rock courtyards made of hard rock, hard, smooth rock. But they had become made smooth by the nuns walking up and down, keeping vigil in the night. They kept vigil in the night time, moving quietly in the courtyard in the nights for the coming of the Christ consciousness, which is called the second coming of Christ, so that can enter into you. So thus, in this way, Jesus was teaching in some of these parables to educate you spiritually as to how to proceed on with your spiritual life. And then in one instance, Jesus made a very peculiar and unusual reference to a woman. On one occasion, Jesus was seated in the house of Lazarus and Martha, and up walked in Mary with a huge 5 liters of oil, of a special oil, a very special, expensive oil, which would have cost a lot of money. And what she did was, she had collected this oil, and then when Jesus appeared in her house, she appeared and poured the entire oil onto his head. And the oil was dripping all through his body. And with loving adoration, she was sweeping part of the oil with her hair on the floor, on his feet, which had trickled down to his feet. And she was sweeping that oil with her hair and cleaning it. The others around, they rebuked her. What have you done? Why have you wasted this oil? It could have been used for better purpose. It could have been sold and money given to the poor. Why have you done this? And Jesus replied, no, She has done this good thing for my burial. For my burial. For that was the oil which was poured on her, poured on Jesus. And you know very well that when a person physically dies, you also embalm the body so that it can be preserved and kept for a few days. Perhaps this oil which was poured on Jesus was meant for this purpose, to keep the body in good condition when he was entombed in the grave for 3 nights and 3 days. Then thereafter he resurrected. So Jesus replied, she has done this for a good purpose. And wherever the teachings, the gospel is taught, may this also be told to people as a memorial to this woman who did such a benign thing for my burial. That's what Jesus said. So thus, Jesus had a unique ability to prophesy about his future. He knew what was going to happen to him and in what manner it was going to happen. So he prophesied it. So thus, we find that beautiful sublime teachings of various aspects are given in the 4 Gospels. Each incident or teaching giving you a spiritual perspective into life. And we shall conclude this particular section with another talk which I shall give the next week. Then thereafter, after that, so next week we'll conclude this overall view, overall presentation of the ministry of Jesus, what it means, what it signifies, and thereafter, that is the week after, not the next week, but the week after that, 2 weeks' time, we will begin on the Gospel of Mark, specifically 0 into Mark, the Gospel of Mark, which was the first Gospel which was written and taken down, so that we have a good insight into the study of the knowledge of the scriptures. And all these scriptures are meant for the entire human race. You don't have to be a Christian or a Hindu or a Buddhist to study these scriptures. Their information and their lessons are meant for the entire human race, equally applicable. And when you comprehend it from all perspectives, your wisdom understanding gets enriched. Things become more clear to you. So therefore, that's what we will do. Then in the meantime, I want to also conclude this by saying that try to get a copy of the Bible. Purchase one, get one copy of it. For those who do not have a copy of it, I advise you to get a copy of the Bible. And preferably, the Bible which has got the red lettered edition, the red lettered edition of the 4 Gospels. The 4 Gospels is part of the New Testament. So the Bible has got 2 components, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And in the New Testament, you have the 4 Gospels And in the four Gospels, Jesus' teachings and statements are given or highlighted in red letters. And in between the red letters, you have the context under which these parables were given or these statements were made, so that it becomes a very historical, and there is a connecting link. There is a connecting link which links up the entire gospel from the beginning till the end. So to make the link a little more easier to comprehend, and for you also to know, because the context in between the red letters, you will find the context of the teachings, the context under which this particular parable came or the statements are made. So therefore, in this manner, if you can read the Bible or follow it up, as we are going to begin with the Gospel of Mark, things will become more clear. So that obtain the red lettered edition of the Bible. Maybe the King James Version is good enough. I can show you a copy of it. Wherein the red lettered words are there. In between you have the words in black. The red lettered words are all very clearly there. So that makes the reading and the study of it more clear to you. So therefore, try to get a red lettered version of the Bible, and that will help you a lot in following it up when we take the Gospel of Mark. Om Tat Sat.